Well, no matter how many times we hear the advice to file our taxes early, April 15th is here, and many people are in a panic this morning.
I'm so excited. I did mine in January for the first time. That's the earliest ever. News 13's Victoria Dunkle is live with some tax tips. Vic, the first bit of advice is file something.
Yes, file something today. If you've not filed your return already, you do need to take some step today before the deadline comes and goes. And I'm getting that advice from accountant and owner here at AVL Tax Professionals, Jim Lowe. We were talking about the importance of just doing some action. Now, people might think, well, what is that something I should file? So where do we start?
Well, I think the first thing is a lot of people may have their tax return already done, but possibly they owe some money, so they're thinking, I just won't file it. I'll just wait till I have the money, and that's a big mistake.
You said that's a very costly mistake.
Yeah, that's one of the largest penalties is the late filing penalty, and that can be avoided just by either filing your tax return or filing an accurate extension by tonight at midnight.
Now, you were talking about how the IRS has changed and revamped its website to make it a little more user-friendly and make it navigable. You know, you can get around that thing today.
It's a new platform. It's very user-friendly. You can even set up a payment option plan there without having to call the IRS or do it over the mail. So there's a lot of good advice there, a lot of user-friendly apps.
Now, this is just the beginning of what we're going to be doing all morning long. If you have questions about taxes, we're taking your questions on our Facebook page. We already have the post there, so share some of your questions. I'll bring them to Jim and we'll get you some answers. Also, one very important reason why you want to stick around for our next half hour, there is a new round of thieves who want to try to prey on you and all the concern that comes up around tax deadline day. There is a warning we have for you coming up in our next half hour about a new scam that is targeting folks by claiming they're with the IRS. That's coming up in our next half hour. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.
And today is the final day for filing your tax return.
So News 13's Victoria Dunkle is live, getting you a game plan for making sure you don't end up facing stiff fines. That's happened to me before. And Victoria, there's also a warning about a new round of tax scams. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And it's one we've heard before, but it's starting to get a little more attention. In fact, let's find out exactly what's going on. Jim Lowe with AVL Tax Professionals, you said you just got an alert from the IRS about people using the phone to try to dupe others out of their tax dollars or out of their information.
Yeah, basically they're calling and pretending that they're the Internal Revenue Service, saying if you have a balance due, you need to pay it immediately. You might have your utilities cut off. You know, the list goes on and on.
That kind of bullying approach,
Yes,
that threat.
But the IRS rarely calls you without notifying you first by mail. They never ask for payment over the phone. They'll never ask for your credit card information, your bank account information over the phone. That's only done by mail. So if somebody's asking you for that information and saying that you're the IRS, they're the IRS, you just need to hang up the phone and then call the IRS at 800-829-1040 and speak to a representative where you're initiating the phone call rather than the phone call coming to you.
Very good advice there to protect your information. But also now, let's talk about one change that's coming when we were talking about filling out our actual tax forms today. You were going through some deductions, and something's changed when it comes to medical expenses.
Yeah, this year we're going to be able to deduct less medical expenses than we have previously, and that's because we have to subtract 10% of our adjusted gross income off the top of our medical expenses if we're under 65 years old. So it's a part of the payment to help fund the Affordable Health Care Act.
Okay.
So you'll just notice that if you tally up your medical expenses, take off 10% of your adjusted gross income, it's going to be a little less than it was in prior years at 7.5%.
And that's just part of the itemized deductions that really can sometimes, people wonder, do I itemize? Do I do the standard deduction? How about in our next half hour you give us a little bit of an idea, maybe some of your advice as to how to make that choice?
And save some time so you don't add up a lot of receipts that aren't going to help you.
Ooh, I'm all for saving time,
That's
especially
right.
when it
We
comes
all
to
are.
deciding if I owe taxes. So bring your questions to our Facebook page. We have a post there. You can share some questions. We'll bring those to Jim all morning long. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.
And speaking of taxes, no one wants to pay more than they have to, and that's what makes looking for tax write-offs so tempting.
News 13's Victoria Dunkle is live to find out when to itemize and when to take that standard deduction. Victoria, it's a tough call for a lot of folks.
It really is, and there are a few things to keep in mind to make the decision that works best for you. And when I need to get that kind of advice, I'm going to talk to a tax professional like Jim Lowe here at AVL Tax Professionals. You say for some people, the ideas of trying to figure out, you know, they don't want to pay more than they have to, and itemizing sounds tempting. What do we need to know to make the right choice for us?
Well, I think the big thing is we don't want to waste a lot of time adding up a bunch of receipts that aren't going to help us. So the first thing a person needs to do is to check just right on the second page of the 1040. It lists the standard deductions for each filing status.
Okay,
So
over
if
there
you're
on
married,
that side. Okay.
If you're married, you get a standard deduction of $12,200. Now, if you start adding up your medical receipts and your charity and your mortgage interest and you're way under that, you just kind of need to eyeball it first instead of really drilling down and getting all those numbers. If you're close to it, then you want to start looking at your charitable contributions, maybe some unreimbursed expenses from your employer, your mortgage interest. This year we also have the mortgage insurance premiums on Schedule A we can deduct. This is the last year for those.
That's right.
So don't miss that on the box on your form from your mortgage company.
When it comes to looking at the combination between the two, is there a flat rate on those charitable donations and stuff that, you know, if you're not near that dollar amount, it's not worth it?
100% on charitable contributions,
Okay.
but like we discussed, medical expenses and unreimbursed employee expenses and some other things are subject to a deduction of a certain percentage of your adjusted gross income. So, you know, you can't take both. You can only take the standard deduction or itemized, and a lot of people think, well, I'll take the standard deduction and I'll take my charity, but it doesn't work that way.
Not in the cards for us to be able to do that, I guess double dipping, if you will. But there's so much that we need to know about our taxes. And in our next half hour, we're going to take a look at a few more tips for you, including what we could do now to help this day next year be a little less painful. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.
Well, today's the last day to file taxes or to file an extension.
On News 13's Victoria Dunkle is live with a few more tips for avoiding those big fines. And Vic, there are actually some steps to take to avoid a big tax bill next year.
Yep, we got you covered on both of those fronts right here. We're at AVL Tax Professionals in Asheville. And Jim Lowe and I have been talking this morning. First things first. So today is the deadline to file an extension. And you say that the best advice is to do something.
Do something. And remember, it's an extension to file, not an extension to pay. So when you fill out your extension form, if you owe tax and are able to pay it, you need to send in the payment with the extension to avoid any additional interest and penalties on the amount you owe.
And if you don't have the money to pay and you owe, there are other routes and avenues you need to explore so you can help mitigate those fines.
There are payment options, but you really can't follow any of those procedures until you actually file the return. So if you've got it done, and the only reason you're not filing it is because you're afraid, because you owe money, just go ahead and file it, and then contact the IRS or send in an installment agreement with the return. Or you can go to irs.gov and also set up a payment plan online there.
Okay, quickly, what do I need to do now to help make sure next year when this day rolls around, I'm not saying ouch with a big bill?
Okay, let's face it, this is the last day of the year that anybody's going to be thinking about taxes.
True.
So we need to start thinking a little bit about 2014 and what changes we may have. If your child is turning 17, you might lose some child tax credit. They may be going to college, maybe getting married. You may be getting married. Also, there's big changes on the North Carolina return for 2014. One of the big ones is people that have side jobs where they get paid with a 1099 or self-employed. We lose a $50,000 deduction this year. So we need to plan our withholding and our estimated tax payments accordingly.
And, you know, if we have questions about how to do something like that, you can talk to Jim. We have a link to his website as well at WLOS.com. Click on news links, and we'll also link you to the IRS.gov site and get you all set. Remember, no matter what, if you haven't filed your return today, at least file something. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.